The partner that betrayed me stole all the money and left me bankrupt, lost my business and everything overnight. I never thought it would come to this. I mean, who would? You start a business with your best friend, your partner in crime, and everything's supposed to be smooth sailing, right? Well, that's what I believed. And boy, was I wrong. We had been friends since middle school. Let's call him Tom for the sake of this story. Tom was the kind of guy who could charm anyone. And that's how he got me into this whole mess in the first place. He had always been the smooth talker, the one who could convince anyone of anything. He came to me one day with this brilliant idea to start a business. He said, "Listen, man, we can do this. We've got the skills, we've got the drive, and we can make some serious cash." At first, I was hesitant. Starting a business is a big deal, and I wasn't sure I was ready to dive into something like that. But Tom, he had a way of making everything sound so damn easy. "Come on, OP," he'd say. "It's going to be great. We'll split everything 50-50, and we'll be rolling in dough in no time." So, like a fool, I agreed. We pooled our savings together, got a small loan, and started a small construction business. At first, everything was perfect. We had a few small jobs that paid decently, and I started to think that maybe Tom was right. Maybe this really was going to work out. But then, things started to change. Tom was the one handling the money. He said it made sense because he was better with numbers, and I trusted him. He'd show me the books occasionally, and everything seemed to be in order. But slowly, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. There'd be charges for materials that didn't make sense, or withdrawals that didn't match up with our records. When I asked Tom about it, he'd brush it off with some excuse like, "Oh, that's just a deposit we needed for the next job," or "I had to pay a supplier under the table to get a discount." I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, why wouldn't I trust him? He was my best friend. But as time went on, the discrepancies became harder to ignore. I kept telling myself that it was probably just a mistake, or that I was overthinking things. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. And then came the day that everything fell apart. One day, I showed up to our office, a small, rundown building that we'd rented on the cheap, and found the door locked. Not just locked, but like someone had taken a crowbar to it and smashed the lock. My heart sank. I knew this wasn't just some random break-in. I finally managed to get inside, and it was like a tornado had ripped through the place. Papers were scattered everywhere, desks overturned, computers gone. I stood there in shock, trying to process what I was seeing. My first thought was that we'd been robbed. But then I noticed something strange. Tom's desk was completely empty. No papers, no personal belongings, nothing. It was like he'd never even been there. I ran to my desk and started rifling through the drawers, looking for anything that might explain what the hell was going on. That's when I found it. A single piece of paper, crumpled up and shoved into the back of a drawer. It was a withdrawal slip from our business account. My stomach turned as I saw the amount. Every last penny we had was gone. I felt like I was going to throw up. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the paper. I kept telling myself that there had to be some kind of mistake, but deep down, I knew the truth. Tom had cleaned us out. I tried calling him, but of course his phone was off. I drove to his apartment, but when I got there, it was the same story as the office. Completely cleaned out. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. I was in a daze. I didn't know what to do, who to turn to. My business, my future, everything I had worked for was gone. And the worst part? The one person I had trusted more than anyone had done this to me. The days that followed were a blur. I went to the police, but they weren't much help. "It's a civil matter," they said. "You need to get a lawyer." So I did. I spent what little money I had left on a lawyer, hoping to somehow track Tom down and get back what he stole. But the lawyer's words were like a punch to the gut. "Chances are you're not going to see that money again," he said bluntly. "He's probably long gone by now. Your best bet is to file for bankruptcy and move on." Move on? How the hell was I supposed to move on? I had nothing left. My savings were gone. The business was bankrupt, and I was drowning in debt. I had to sell my car just to pay rent and keep a roof over my head. Every day was a struggle just to survive. The worst part was having to tell my family what had happened. My parents were devastated, especially my dad. He had always been so proud of me for starting my own business, for being successful. Now, I was just a failure. A fool who had been taken for everything I had. I couldn't even look him in the eye when I told him. My mom cried, and I could see the disappointment in my dad's face, even though he tried to hide it. And then there were the rumors. In a small town, news travels fast, and before I knew it, everyone knew what had happened. Some people were sympathetic, but others, not so much. I overheard people whispering about how I must have been in on it, or that I was too stupid to see what was happening. It was humiliating, but the worst was yet to come. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. One morning, I got a knock on my door. It was a guy from the bank, here to tell me that they were foreclosing on my house. Apparently, Tom had taken out a second mortgage on the business property, something I didn't even know was possible, and defaulted on it. Since my name was also on the business, I was on the hook for it. I was stunned. "How the hell can you take my house?" I shouted. "That loan was for the business, not my home." But the guy didn't care. He just handed me some paperwork and told me I had 30 days to vacate the property. I stood there in my doorway, holding those papers, feeling like the ground had just been ripped out from under me. Everything was gone. My business, my money, my house, everything. I spent the next few weeks scrambling to find somewhere to live. I ended up crashing on a friend's couch, too ashamed to go back to my parents. I couldn't let them see me like this, completely broken. A shadow of the person I used to be. But even in my darkest moments, there was a small part of me that refused to give up. I couldn't let Tom get away with this. He had ruined my life, and I was determined to make him pay. It took months of digging, but I finally found a lead on where Tom might have gone. He had always talked about moving to the coast, living the good life by the beach. I wasn't sure if it was just bullshit, but I had nothing else to go on. So I scraped together what little money I had and bought a bus ticket. When I got to the coast, I spent weeks searching for him. I checked bars, motels, any place he might have holed up. I was getting desperate, and I was about to give up when I finally found him. He was sitting in a shitty dive bar, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. I didn't even think. I just walked up to him and punched him in the face as hard as I could. He went down like a sack of potatoes, and the whole bar went silent. I stood over him, breathing hard, waiting for him to get up and fight back. But he didn't. He just lay there, clutching his nose, blood pouring between his fingers. "You ruined my life," I spat at him. "You took everything from me." He didn't say anything, just looked up at me with those cold, dead eyes, the same eyes that had lied to me over and over again. I wanted to beat him to a pulp, but something in me just broke. I couldn't do it. He wasn't worth it. I left him there, bleeding on the floor. I thought I'd feel some kind of closure, but I didn't. I just felt empty. It's been about a year since I found Tom in that bar, and honestly, I'm still trying to piece my life back together. I ended up moving back in with my parents, which was humiliating, but they've been supportive. I've been working odd jobs here and there, trying to save up enough money to start over. It's been tough, but I'm getting by. My pride took a massive hit, and there are days when I feel like I'll never be able to recover from what happened. But I'm trying to focus on the small wins. Every dollar I save, every step I take toward rebuilding my life. One thing that's helped me get through all this is therapy. At first, I was resistant to the idea. I mean, who wants to sit in a room and spill their guts to a stranger? But my mom convinced me to give it a try, and honestly, it's been a lifesaver. My therapist has helped me work through the anger, the betrayal, and the shame. It's a long process, but I'm learning how to cope. As for Tom, I haven't heard from him since that day in the bar. A part of me wishes I had pressed charges, but another part of me just wants to move on. I'm tired of living in the shadow of what he did to me. I don't know where he is or what he's doing, and honestly, I don't care anymore. He's not worth the energy. I've started to reconnect with some old friends, people I lost touch with during the whole mess. It's been nice to have a support system, to be reminded that I'm not alone. They've been understanding, never pushing me to talk about what happened unless I bring it up. It's been a slow process, but I'm starting to feel like myself again, or at least a new version of myself. A few months ago, I got a call from one of our old clients, a guy we did a small job for back when the business was still up and running. He had heard about what happened and wanted to help me out. He offered me a job, nothing big, just some handyman work around his property. But it was something, and I jumped at the chance. It felt good to be working again, to have a purpose. And it wasn't just about the money, although that was a big part of it. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't completely broken, that I could still be useful, that I could still contribute. The work was tough, physically demanding, but I threw myself into it. It was like a form of therapy, sweating out the anger, the frustration, the bitterness. After a few weeks, the guy, let's call him John, started talking about expanding his property, maybe even doing some renovations. He asked if I'd be interested in managing the project, given my experience. I was hesitant at first, afraid of screwing things up again, but John was patient, reassuring me that he trusted me to do a good job, so I agreed. It's been a few weeks since we started the project, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm actually moving forward. It's not a business, and I'm not making the kind of money I used to, but it's a start. I'm learning to trust myself again, to believe that I can rebuild, even if it's just one small step at a time. It's been 2 years since the day Tom betrayed me, and I can finally say that I'm starting to move on. The project with John turned out to be a success, and it's opened up new opportunities for me. I've been getting more work, mostly through word of mouth, and I'm slowly building up a reputation as someone who can get the job done. I've also started to think about the future in a way that I couldn't before. For a long time, I was stuck in survival mode, just trying to make it through each day. But now, I'm starting to plan again, to dream about what could be. I'm not saying I'm going to start another business, at least not anytime soon, but I'm beginning to believe that it's possible, that I could create something new, something better. My relationship with my parents has also improved. Moving back in with them was hard, but it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. We've had a lot of time to talk, to heal, and to reconnect. They've been my biggest supporters, and I'm so grateful for that. I don't know where I'd be without them. As for Tom, I've made peace with the fact that I may never get justice. I've had to let go of the anger, the need for revenge, because it was eating me alive. I've learned to focus on the things I can control, my work, my relationships, my own well-being. It's not easy, and I still have bad days, but I'm not letting what he did define me anymore. Life isn't perfect, and I know I've got a long way to go, but I'm getting there. I'm learning to trust again, to take risks, to believe that I can build a future for myself. It's not the life I imagined, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. So that's where I'm at. It's been a hell of a journey, and I wouldn't wish what I went through on anyone. But I've learned a lot about myself, about who I am and what I'm capable of. And I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep fighting, keep working, and keep building something new. Something that's all mine. Thanks for sticking with me through this. It means more than I can say.